Welcome back. In this video, we will create our first terrain and add adjacent neighbours to it. To add a new terrain, right-click on the hierarchy and select 3D Object, Polaris, Terrain Wizard. This will bring up the wizard window. Select the Create Level tab if not selected, and expand the Create Terrains fold-out. I want to create a grid of 2x2 terrains, so let's put 2 to the Tile Count X and Tile Count Z field. Each terrain will have its dimension of 500 meters in both width, height and length, so just leave it as is. Next is the material settings for our terrain. We're using URP, so the lighting model is locked to PBR. If you're using the built-in render pipeline, you can also choose Lambert and Blinfong mode. The texturing model determines how to apply texture on your terrain. We have Gradient Lookup, which applies simple height-based and slope-based colouring with gradients. Colour Map, which applies a single albedo map and metallic map to the whole terrain. Splat. This mode is similar to how Unity Terrain works. It blends multiple tiling textures with weight maps. If you choose this mode, you also need to specify your maximum texture layers and normal map usage in Splat's model. And finally, Vertex Color, as the name suggests, uses embedded vertex color for shading. We have a section in the documentation showing how each shading mode looks. Please take a look. Next, the name prefix field allows you to append some text to the beginning of your terrain object name. I would recommend using something meaningful because it's easier to organize your scene. Also, some level streaming systems use an object's name for its functions. Group ID. This allows you to split the scene to many terrain groups, so you can use the terrain tools to work on one group at a time. The last one, select the directory to store all of your generated terrain data assets. Don't use the root assets folder unless you want a messy project. Finally, click the Create button. Close the wizard window. Here you have a grid of 2x2 terrains with default sand texture applied to them. After creating the terrain, you should be aware that there are some assets created along with them. The terrain data asset contains all settings of a single terrain, as well as its height map, textures, and vegetation. The generated geometry asset contains terrain surface meshes. It's worth noting that you don't need to add this generated geometry asset to your version control system. And a material, this one was managed by the terrain component, so it doesn't need much care for most of the time. Now you have your terrains created. Let's say you want to add more adjacent terrains to the grid. How to do that? Select one of them, then expand the Neighbour Tiles section. In the Scene view, click on the square next to the terrain to add a new one at that location. Close the neighbour tiles section when you're done. That's it. That's how you create new terrains in your scene.